Hey everyone, Andrew here. I'm in my house. It's actually Tuesday night. I'm pre-recording my Wednesday reflection because I'm going to be busy with some furniture movers Wednesday morning, and it turns out that's when they're going to be delivering some furniture from my grandmother's estate. And so, you go where the movers tell you're going to go. But I wanted to say one, our books came in for the practice of the presence of God by Brother Lawrence, our Lenten books. They came in yesterday or maybe the day before, and they are in the back of the church. And I set out on the church's calendar kind of when we're going to be reading and discussing what pages. Um, so in the interest of time, because I just got this, um, today I'm going to talk a little bit about the first 30 pages, which sounds like a lot, but such a small book, it's pretty easy. Um, Next week I'll discuss the second section, which is so the first section is the conversations. Next week we'll discuss letters. The week following we will discuss the spiritual maxims, and then that next week, that last week of Lent, we'll discuss the character of Brother Lawrence. It's essentially what the three sections of the book would be if you had to break it up into four sections. And so, having really only given this a short bit of consideration, this first section, I am intrigued to more tenderly and fully digest this book. Brother Lawrence seems to me, immediately upon reading of him, and especially the people who are talking about him, to be an immensely spiritual fellow. Someone who immediately puts the room at ease and makes you want to perk up and hear what he has to say. Apparently, Brother Lawrence's conversion to the religious life came from when he was 18 years old. Where was it? Okay. Brother Lawrence's conversion at 18 was the result of the mere sight on a midwinter day of a dry and leafless tree standing gaunt against the snow. Something I think we've seen recently. And that stirred in him, the view of this tree standing against the snow, stirred deep thoughts within him of the change of the coming spring that spring would bring. And from that moment on, he grew and waxed strong in the knowledge and love and favor of God, endeavoring constantly, as he put it, to walk as in his presence. Apparently, Brother Lawrence had been troubled in his late teens and spent several years believing completely, wholeheartedly, that he was damned and that he would in no way be saved. And after 4 years of basically being convinced that he was no good for this world, that upon seeing this tree and reflecting upon the change that spring would bring for that naked and shivering tree, that he himself could also, perhaps, there was something that God could do for him. Upon reflecting later, it says, Lawrence said that I engaged in a religious life only for the love of God, and I have endeavored to act only for him. Whatever becomes of me, whether I be lost or saved, I will always continue to act purely for the love of God. I shall have this good at least, that till death I shall have done all that is in me to love him. Done all that you can to love God. I need to hear that kind of calm and still presence from someone who lives a pure life of faith. Excuse me. A pure life of faith. That we in Lent are reminded to return to God, to put ourselves in lives of faith. I'll be honest, working in the church, I feel a lot of times, even doing, reflections like this, that I'm really just doing a job and I'm getting stuff done, taking care of people's needs, answering the phone, replying to email, making sure this looks right or this turns out okay. And I realize upon kind of stepping back that this is really all about God. And it's not really about, how the bulletin looks or what song is chosen for this service or, how good your message is on the internet, whether you have a little logo in the corner or not. In fact, it's really so much more. Really, it's so much more about encountering God. And I think about those times of pilgrimage that I've taken in my life, whether it's been a proper pilgrimage like going to the Holy Land or going to some other either special, exotic, or spiritually charged trip for the purpose of kind of encountering God, like going to a holy place to encounter God, or even if it's just something that in your mind or your heart is a special thing. The fact that you are, stepping out your door to go to a place in order to encounter God is a pilgrimage. And I find that a lot of the clutter that we throw onto ourselves just gets cast off when we actually prepare ourselves and strap up to go meet God on pilgrimage. And that could be a trip, to the Holy Land, or it could be a trip to a place in the woods that you like, or a family farm that is special to you, something like that. And so I find that I encounter God, one, when I intend to do it on a trip, but also when I go somewhere. And I think that's because it makes me get away from things like the email and the office stuff and whatnot. And it makes me just sit and be quiet with God in a way that I'm terrible at doing. Well, no, I'm not going to be hard on myself. I'm not that bad at it. I wish I was better, but I'm not bad. And if you're being hard on yourself for not, being a monk or a nun right now and having this amazing, pure ability to commune with God, then give yourself some credit. You're doing fine. I also really liked on page 19, he was talking about how Brother Lawrence had been given a chore that he really didn't like doing. He said, when on the occasion of practicing some virtue offered, Lawrence addressed himself to God, saying, Lord, I cannot do this unless thou enablest me. And then he received the strength to do more than was sufficient. But when he failed in his duty, he can only confess his fault, saying, God, I shall never do otherwise if you leave me to myself. It is you who must hinder my falling and mend what I amiss. Then after that he gave himself no further unease about it. God, I'm not going to stop failing unless you help me. And then he gave himself no more grief about it. God will help us in God's time. And if we stop to get frustrated by those kinds of things, then we are not really putting our faith and trust in God. We're just being cranky about a timeline that we invented in our head or accelerated in our head, and instead didn't give ourselves up to God. I'm really liking this book. I'm really liking it. Aside from a proper conversation with like chairs in a circle and whatnot, and coffee on the burner, leave thoughts or comments in the comment section of this video, and we'll talk about more good stuff to come. But from my first reading of the first 30 pages, I return to God. I return to the simple presence of God that gets rid of all of the distractions of the world and really gets to the honest intention of being present with God and being open in regular, steady conversation with our Creator. Whether that's on the car ride home or walking down a hallway at your office or whatever it might be. Go with God. Give God your failings and your misses, so that God may mend what is amiss in us. God bless everyone.